Hi everyone, I'm David Caplan with abcnews.com, and this is Real Live. Here with me today is film blogger Candice Frederick, politics and music expert and pop culture Mike Muse, and ABC News entertainment reporter Michael Rothman. All right guys, we're real, we're live, let's get started. First, let's talk movies. Wonder Woman. Done incredible. We talked about this last time. This movie is everywhere. Everyone's talking about it. Worldwide box office is insane. $435 million so far, and reports out today say that by the end of this weekend, $550 million worldwide. So I think we've all seen this. What are some of your guys' favorite scenes from the movies? And don't spoil it too much for people who haven't seen it.
I mean, when she dies at the end, we shouldn't talk about that.
When she gives birth to kids and stuff.
When she realizes her power.
Right.
And then she just like annihilates a bunch of people and she throws like a hissy fit. It's wonderful.
And why did you like that? Was it just sort of like the visual for it, or was there like a message behind it?
Visual. Sure, the message too, that she's like kind of coming into her own womanhood, coming into her own being an Amazon, but also being a god.
Exactly. I know, I'm looking for deep meaning here, beyond the superficial, right?
Right. And the effects were just so amazing. It was just like everything was flying all over the place, and it was just like, you just
it was great.
You know?
I enjoyed like the visuals of World War I. I love the backdrop of that, and I like how Patty introduced that, and so it gives you context and allows you to talk about it without actually having to talk about it. So she used it as a very secondary character, without having to focus too much on the history of it, by just letting it be a natural progress for the movie.
And Patty, we're just talking about Patty Jenkins, as everyone knows, director, and she did an incredible job with this, right?
Yeah, she did.
And okay, Rothman,
I'm going to add to Candice's point. So I think you're talking about the scene in No Man's Land, right, where she kind of takes off the jacket and you see the full. What's a great addition to that is that was also a tribute to Richard Donner's Superman. So a throwback to him taking off the shirt and seeing the logo. So it's kind of like a hat tip to that and some to other iconic movies of that genre. And so, a great blending of the past, present, and future.
And even with a hat tip to that, I mean, let's give her credit. She was the fourth woman to break over the 500 million mark.
Yeah,
I mean, that's incredible. So hats off to Patty for that one.
And that's worldwide box office, even including a few boycotts in some countries that weren't particularly into the movie, or Gal Gadot. So it still did pretty well, I think.
Yeah.
But what do you guys think about, is this going to open up the door maybe for more diversity movies, for more women in movies, in that genre, whether it's superhero movies? It's done so well. So remember last time we were talking about before it opened, and we were like, well, what's going to be the outcome of this, if it does well, if it does bad? Now we know it's been an incredible success.
I think the big takeaway from this should be what we'll see next. So this is a character the DC universe can build around, and they should build around. And so if you notice the storyline, and no spoilers here, but if you notice the storyline of the movie, it doesn't really 100% jive with the rest of Dawn of Justice or Man of Steel or whatever. And I think that's great. And I think this should be ground zero. This is where they should start and move on. And so that'll be, because she is the best hero in the universe right now. And so I hope they recognize that. And then hopefully with Patty Jenkins, I hope that they give her the reins to other bigger projects. Much like you've seen in Marvel, the Russo brothers did Captain America, and then after that did so well, they were giving an Avengers movie. So hopefully she's given a Justice League 2 or something bigger, and that way you see these are the two tent poles of their universe.
And also too with that, Michael, like numbers talk. Right, so the fact that this grossed over $500 million, like globally, that leaves an economic argument to be had that female-driven, female-led, and female-directed movies can actually score in the box office, in particular overseas. Now I know this isn't a comic movie, but today F. Gary Gray just became the first black director to direct a film over $1 billion, which was the Fast and Furious.
That's a lot.
But we'll even do a deep dive into that, though. Interesting enough, 80% of that came from overseas sales, which completely dispels this number. The reason why they don't use black leads is because it doesn't do well overseas, which leads us right into Black Panther.
Right, but
Good
I want to touch on your question though regarding
awesome, by the way.
Yes, it does.
Amazing.
Pause.
Yes, pause.
So for Wonder Woman, I do think that it had a really great opening, and I think that it'll be hard to argue that there should be more like it. Even beyond Patty Jenkins, there should be other women filmmakers who have the helm in terms of blockbusters, but also women of color filmmakers like Gina Bythewood coming up, and a slew of others.
Spider-Man.
So yes, exactly. And so hopefully this will lead to those discussions and why that there's a need for that kind of diversity, not just a woman and not just Patty, but women of color.
I mean, hopefully it'll be a game changer, really, for the industry.
Because she'll be the first person of color to direct a comic book movie.
Absolutely, which is major.
Which is
major,
huge.
Yeah.
Which is, it's ironic, too, because in publishing, this has been happening for 10, 20 years. If you look at the Marvel lineup is so diverse, and it's gotten, you know, a lot of praise for it. You know, there's an Asian American Hulk now. There's a female Thor. You know, it's just
So let's talk Black Panther though, right? You did the great segue. So did everyone see the trailer? It's incredible. It's long. You know, it broke early. The trailer was. I mean, I loved it because I think it was so visual. You know, we didn't see the whole movie, so before it's like saying what was meaning behind some of the scenes, but the visuals were incredible. I think also, you know, it takes place not in, you know, it was like there's scenes like in Africa, it involves South America, so it's even breaking the conventions of the setting as well. And I thought it was so. It was just great. It was really lively, and it was one of those trailers, I think, which gives you enough. I feel sometimes a lot of times with superhero trailers, you get like a little bit. You know, like with Superman, they like show the logo. And you're supposed to be like, oh my God, I need to see it, right? But like, and I'm like, it's disappointing. But this, I'm like, okay, I got a decent taste about it. So what did you guys think about the trailer? Like, are you psyched about it?
I'm like camping out right now. So in my mind,
you got your ticket.
The streets,
You fandango.
I have my popcorn, I have my snack, my sleeping bag.
Like
like what I'm wearing. Like
crew
Twitter went crazy, right? Like who you bringing in? How you sliding through? You know what I mean? And so that's what's so cool about this. But the historical context of it, that is based in Wakanda, right? This make-believe place. But even how they do it is pre-colonial Africa, right? But when you think they weren't colonized yet, but it's kind of similar to Ethiopia, right? Which was one of the first countries not to be colonized, right? So you kind of had that element kind of coming through. But what really excites me about this is visual and power of a powerful black cast, right? Unapologetically black, right? That will undoubtedly be a huge success, right? So now there's case studies economically with Patty and Wonder Woman, right? And Fast and Furious that with people of color can do well outside globally, but it really goes to the power of media, right? I don't know what it would be like to be a black boy at the age of between 5 and 13 to grow up knowing that the president can be black, right? There's no longer an option with that, and to know my superhero can be black. Like now that's what we always talk about is the power of media, and now media actually has its chance to do good, right? And to expose individuals to what is possible, to what they can inspire to be with no limits. So that's really what's a powerful takeaway for me.
So do you think this is going to open up sort of, you know, once the movie opens, do you think it's going to open up a new, you know, a discussion about this, like you're saying that there are these new role models and that it's really going to open up, you know, a lot more discussion, but it's really going to open the way for similar movies about this. And be like, oh, it doesn't always have to be all these like white superheroes running around Metropolis. Do you know what I mean? It's going to be a little different.
The discussion's already happening. I don't know if it's going to translate in terms of the industry, but the discussion is definitely happening. I think that's going to propel the industry to make some changes.
And really make them wake up a little bit, perhaps.
And something you'll notice in the trailer, too, there's a lot of things that have been, I guess, Marvel opened the door for, but that this one's kind of just breaking down the door for. So, like, we talk about Wakanda is... I mean, Cosmic Marvel with Guardians kind of opened the way for this beautiful tapestry of colors that we have. Now it's just kind of like this amazing, you know, wonderland that we're seeing there that's unapologetically, you know, what it is. And then also, too, which I think is great that they're not going with what we've usually seen is, if you know the books and you've seen the trailer a little bit, it's like, oh, I don't want to be a superhero. He wants to be king. He wants to be a superhero. He is
very ambitious.
You see him just kind of like he's braggadocious. He's gloating. He is a very confident king. People around him are very confident. Michael B. Jordan, who's going to play the villain in this too, who's maybe his equal. These guys are all there's no lack of confidence there, and that is amazing to see.
Well, Michael, you picked up a good point.
Sorry.
No, we're so excited to talk about it. We're like Black Panther.
Simmer down.
And then.
My favorite line, I think my favorite moment from Civil War, where we met Black Panther, was one of his bodyguards, the 2 female bodyguards he had in that movie. There's something where like she gets in an altercation, I think it's with Black Widow or something, and he's like, no, I'm saving you from her. Like, I mean, they just are very confident. It's just going to be
we're all about girl power today. I love it, right?
Thanks, guys.
We did it for you, right?
But what's also interesting too about that is that he is a monarch, he is this king, and then he is a superhero. But you can juxtapose that to what's happening right now in our society, right? It's like, where does the power actually lie, right? Does it lie in royalty, i.e., our leaders, democratic elected leaders, or does it reside within the people. And you see that movement kind of happening. And there is one party, not going to name it, but they're fighting themselves in terms of, is this leadership driven from the top, or is this resistance driven from the bottom? And we see them struggling with how to really reconcile like those two dynamics. And that's kind of what you see in Black Panther is this monarch is either ruler, or if you get conquered, does the people then see, well, how can you protect me? So then therefore, do I need to take it into my own hands?
I think sometimes with superhero ones, they're reflecting society, they're allegories for things. If you think of like even X-Men, something like that is always an allegory for like World War, for World War II, or for anti-immigrant sentiments, because they're mutants, they're different. And I think you see that in a lot of superhero films because the main figure is almost, they're aspirational, they're powerful, they're going against the system, they're going against, established structures like the government. And I feel it's always a very, constant theme.
And speaking of directors too, if I can sneak it in really quickly, just as Patty was very intentional in how she handled Wonder Woman, I'm so thankful they got Ryan Coogler, who I know will be very intentional in how he only handles the storyline, but how he brings present scenarios in it. He has an incredible track record from Fruitvale Station, right, in terms of how he represented the Rocky scenario, and he has this great way of being intentional. And I think that's also a signal to Hollywood, if you're listening, and I think that they are, it doesn't work just to hire anyone of color, or just hire any woman. Hire the one that has the intention to be respectful of the story, the culture, and the narrative.
Back to how we know this is going to be a good movie. So there's been 2 Human Torches in the Marvel Universe that have been recast. One became Captain America, and the other one is now going to be the Black Panther's rival, and Michael B. Jordan. So I think
we got a lot of
stuff. We're good. Good call, Michael.
We were talking about strong women in film. Now let's talk to loud women and talkative women. Bette Midler at the Tonys. We tried that little segue there, right? Okay, so we saw.
Beyond impressive.
I was trying. I was like, okay, our outfit. No, all right. So the playoff song, we all know, we see that in an award show, someone's talking too much, and then all of a sudden, you see the orchestra pit down there, they start playing. But I think we got a little sound of Bette Midler saying, simmer down, orchestra, I still got to talk. Let's listen.
I thank Osland Holden, my beloved Osland, and I just want to say, revival, shut that crap off. I just want to say,
And no, she wasn't stuttering. She just, you know what I loved about this? She wouldn't continue finishing until they started. She's like, I just want to say. She was not having it. So first of all, I mean, what do you think these songs are even necessary? I mean, I kind of think, listen, it's an taped awards show. They don't have an infinite amount of time for everyone to come. You got to keep everyone in line. And the funny thing is, really, everyone always gets more worked up when it's like a bigger star. If it was just the key grip was getting a Tony, he would be like, oh my God, you get 12 seconds, right? Like Bette Midler, it'd be totally different, right? Bette Midler deserves an hour.
Like the best choreographer being like,
no. And I'm gonna do an 8 count actually.
But I think so. We're all in agreement. We're all in agreement. It's necessary. You got to do it, right? Now, do you think that did she handle it right? I think she did. I mean, she's also a funny person. I mean, what's she supposed to do?
She's a funny person. She wasn't rude about it. She just continued talking. If that's rude. She just all she did was just continue talking until they actually had to stop.
And she's an icon too. So like she could make that statement.
And the thing is, I think actually in a weird way, people actually like seeing it because it makes the award show seem more real. I mean, you've seen this at the Oscars, the Golden Globes, all those shows. I think
real live.
Yeah, exactly, real live, right? So you're talking. They're gonna start playing the music while we're talking. No, but I think people like that first. So the viewer likes it. It seems real. They feel they're part of it. And there's always, I feel, this aspect when you see this in shows, the audience, it's very insider. They're like, oh, ha, ha, ha. They're laughing. They think it's funny. But I do think different people can get away with it and what they're saying. You know what I mean?
Only a legendary status, iconic status. Like someone who's just new to acting, just got to the Broadway stage. I don't think it could command the audio guy to say, stop.
And she wasn't rude about it. It's funny. It's comical. And again, I just think, she's people, they like that. It's just so, it makes it really, it makes it, very real, right? Now we're going to do another really good transition here. Talking about people on stage, Shakespeare in the Park. This is a little bit more of a serious thing. I think you like the transition, right?
We like pipe up, relax. Now all hands on deck. And speaking of Shakespeare in the Park.
And we're also New York too, right? So there's 2 common themes here. We got stage, we got New York. Very common themes. All right, so Shakespeare in the Park, Delta and Bank of America, they pulled in different ways their sponsorship of Julius Caesar production. And in the production, Caesar is portrayed by someone who looks like Trump. He's wearing the suit, the red tie, the hair, the whole thing, right? And at the end, per Caesar, so it's not as if a separate storyline was created, he's stabbed to death, right? He's killed. So it's a little controversy. So Delta, different people. Delta has pulled their entire sponsorship, but Bank of America is really just pulling it just for that production. They're still going to be involved with the public theater. And then just to get this out there, and then we're going to open up the floor, is don't forget, a Barack Obama figure was in the same role before. Crickets. No one pulled sponsorship for that. So there's a bit of an issue there. So first of all, just what do you guys think? Is Shakespeare in the Park crossing the line by I think in general, having a president, keeping in mind there's Barack Obama and Donald Trump, or are they crossing the line now?
I don't think they're crossing the line at all. I think art imitates life, life imitates art. Like, that's the role of art. Art is to expose our society to what actually is happening to this very interpretive instance. You can only do so much with what you're working with. So if you have a president who says, I can shoot an individual on Fifth Avenue and still win with no repercussions, well, then that elevates a level of art that is very emblematic to what Shakespeare really was, to what Julius Caesar really was. The issue that I actually have with this is with Delta, right? And the issue I have with this is this whole, dichotomy and double standards. So Delta decided to go through at the Guthrie Theater in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and support it when it was emblematic of Barack Obama, a black man. Nobody. Crickets, it was quiet. People on the right was very quiet. But then all of a sudden, when now it's in New York City and it's Trump, now Delta has this huge up in arms about it. It only wants to pull from the show, but from the public theater as a whole. So my issue is more so with Delta, right? We're actually missing an opportunity to really explain what Shakespeare is, to be able to usher Shakespeare into mass culture and to say, no, let's give some context of this 400-year piece and really kind of what it means, and to really take corporate advocacy to another level to usher in more Shakespearean.
What's wrong with the statement from Delta saying, look, we don't condone this, but this is art and this is what this is, and not jumping the gun and pulling. Just saying, look, we're not associated with. We've all done that with comments or whatever. I think on Twitter, our buyers are always retweets do not equal endorsements or whatever. Just do something like that and say, look, this is not our endorsement, but it's art, and you have to let the artists work and do what they're going to do and what they see. It's nothing, as long as it's not threatening or hurting anybody. What's the problem?
I think also, I just want to say, I think the reason why this was getting a lot more attention now is, this also follows Kathy Griffin doing the Tyler Sheets. So I think, it's completely true that there was, on a weird way, a double standard, with Barack Obama, but this is following, Kathy Griffin. So everyone is already really riled up that, there's these depictions of Trump, being killed and murdered. And I think that's why, and you're right, the fact that it's in New York, this is the reality of being in New York. Everything is always much more amplified. The spotlight is on it. But do you think that we're just, I think with Trump lately, there's just been everything. It's so much more intense. You're dealing with an intense president. An intense public figure inspires intense reaction, right? It's very polarizing. And I think, do you think if there wasn't this Kathy Griffin incident days before, really simultaneously, it would have been toned down?
I think it would have been. I think they still would have done it.
Yeah.
I think Kathy Griffin is completely different than that because the right wing, the media really piped up when it came to that. And so the issue that Delta took was this instance moment. They didn't reference the culture and the times we're living in. They said the actual moment was what offended them, but the moment didn't offend you when it came to the one in Minneapolis. It just goes to what corporate social responsibility is. And so we have to ask our corporations, what is corporate social responsibility for you? Is it just a gala where you sponsor a table, or do you do more of a deep dive and actually take more of a long view approach and say, how can we support the artists of next? How can we explain what art is, right? How can we help the next August Wilson, the next Dominique Maruso become these incredible playwrights in order to express our culture and our society? That's the issue I have with it.
I think probably also, at the same time, they're a business. And Delta, they're having meetings where they're like, you know what, 50% of the country or so voted for Trump. We don't want to alienate all those people. That's also the reality, I feel, of these businesses. That's how they justify it. Do they really care about that? I'm sure a lot of the people at Delta are like, yeah, we're fine with it on a personal level, right? But at the end of the day, they know they're going to get all these boycotts and campaigns. We always see that.
But again, airlines have not been making great choices recently anyway. So, I don't know if that's really... Yeah,
they have to have a reason behind doing it. Are they really offended? I don't think, you know what I mean? I think it's a business thing for them.
Yeah, they might be feeling maybe heat from what they think that their audience or their customers are going to feel rather than what they actually, because I don't think that's going to affect their business at all.
Yeah, I mean, they're probably loud. The critics are loud, probably.
I love the view of like economic basis and decisions, right? You know, that's my favorite thing. Economic basis, economic conclusions.
He gets very excited.
Yeah, look at what Starbucks did, right? Starbucks, we had to watch different corporations really advocate for the Religious Freedom Act, for LGBT rights in Indiana and Arkansas. We saw the same thing happen in North Carolina with the transgender bathrooms and identity. Starbucks was the only corporation when issues of Black America getting shot on social media, Howard Schultz said, something's got to be done. I've got to do something and do race together. Controversial as it was, but what's interesting enough, the earnings actually increased the following quarter. So there was no economic hit. So you necessarily won't take an economic hit because you make a stance. Individuals actually want you to make a stance. I'm a very frequent flyer of Delta. You know what I mean? And so I take issue with how they reacted to it. It's just how do you explain it? That's all. Better corporate communications can explain it better. So then I challenge Delta's corporate communications, right? Did you handle it the correct way? Could it have been done differently?
I mean, I think usually the critics of these things, they're the most vocal. Like when you hear these boycotts, but you are right. A lot of times, you know, people were boycotting Target over the transgender bathroom thing. You know what? Is it affecting Target? No. Do you know what I mean? I think sometimes the companies, some of them get scared. I mean, Target in particular is being good where they're like, we don't care. You know, sometimes they're just like, doesn't matter. I think you're right. Starbucks has been great. I mean, Starbucks was one of the first companies. They opened up a Starbucks in Ferguson right after last year, and they just celebrate, I know, their 1-year anniversary. And that's an example of great corporate sponsorship. They're in the community. And then I'm sure, unless there were, you know, bizarre type of people, most people were, you know, embraced that. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's an example of really great involved. Take it away,
Can you think of one example where a company held to what they thought was right in a positive way, stuck true to their values, and things turned out negatively? Because I can't think of one. I can think of like people jumping the gun and going this way or that way, but as far as like, in the end, historically across the board, companies that do this and stick to what their core values are in a positive way have always ended up on top. So I don't. When someone jumps the gun, and it's also very subjective. So it could be like one person at Delta is like, no, you know, up very high up. I just don't get it, because to me, when these things happen and people like kind of overshoot their reactions, we've been around for a couple hundred years.
Well, I mean, so we're going to think about flying Delta then, I guess. That's the thing, right? All right, now we're going to go to a topic that I know Mike is very excited about here, the NBA Finals, right? I had to get a little bit of a lesson here.
I feel like we're going to love this one.
I know, you guys are going to love this.
My cheat sheet.
I know, we're just going to sit like this and like take it all in. Okay, no, but this much I do know. Okay, so Warriors, Cavs, 3 years in a row, kind of predictable, right? We're used to this, the darlings, kind of, I guess, of the NBA Finals. So, first of all, can LeBron really be considered, you know, the greatest player if, you know, he loses in the finals?
Absolutely, yes. I'm going to stand up and say it.
Right? I know. You're very jazzed.
I could not disagree with you more. Well, it's not just located to that, though. I think it's all over our social media that there's a very divided group of people that are like, oh, MJ's the best, and LeBron's the best, and this points and that points, and there's videos and everything like that. But for me, it's a very age and generational thing. I think if people are posting, LeBron is clearly the greatest of all time, blah, blah, they weren't around when we were watching MJ play and the influence he had. And it's not about championships and being undefeated in the finals, which he was. It's not about him almost beating Shaq and Penny with like 30 games back in from taking a 3-year layoff, which he almost did. It's about the fact of his impact and his influence, and he was just like lethal. And so, look, I think LeBron is a fantastic player, but it's just not the same feeling that he was in that generation. And look, I'm a basketball fan now. I was 20 years ago, and I just think they're vastly different. So I think you're taking crazy pills if you think there's a debate, but I think if you think that he is hands down the greatest, and people like, you know, younger people are like, he's so good. Well, you didn't see MJ play.
Do you think one is more iconic? I mean, to me, probably it's an older thing. I'm like, oh, Michael Jordan is everything. Like, do you know what I mean? I'm like, LeBron to me is like, oh, kind of more recent. And I think the masses, if you're not into bad, like, I totally, like, to me, it's Michael Jordan. I'm like, Nike shoes done. He's a brand. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I wouldn't even know any different.
But it's a different kind of impact, and it's more generational, right? Michael Jordan had his time. Michael Jordan had a very unique team that surrounded him. And also, too, Michael Jordan wasn't playing against what now we call that dangerous word, superstars. super teams, right? So the style of play of basketball had changed. The way the NBA has constructed these teams has changed. The way that these teams went from the big three, now we have the super four. That game has changed as well. So that, as for me, it's comparing apples and oranges. Like, you have to respect Michael Jordan for one of the greatest of all times, and you still have to respect for LeBron James for what he will become. I mean, he's the only one to average a triple-double for NBA Finals, which is insane. Someone go to the impact Jordan had on shoe sales, which you brought up with Jordan. I will actually take that and then raise you one and talk about the impact he's had on the city of Cleveland, right? Like, if you look at Cleveland was like the other Detroit that never got the attention that Detroit got, because Cleveland really wasn't the top of the list of like most dangerous or, you know, most this, most that. So Cleveland's just there, like kind of hanging around with no identity, right? And so then when LeBron comes,
he was like a booster for the city.
A boost for the city, economically, keyword of the day. Keyword of the day. But it allowed for businesses to flourish, right? And so it allowed for an increase in sales in hotels and bars and restaurants and employees, and it allowed the city to have an identity through the narrative of LeBron James, of Akron, of Northeast Ohio. So we as a nation, even if you didn't pay attention to basketball and or you didn't pay attention to Cleveland at all, you were forced to figure out what is this city, right? And with all his sponsorship, they were able to tell the story of Cleveland, to tell the story of Akron, and to tell the story of who he is, which gives the city identity. I mean, at one point, guys, they were actually estimating that he could make the city up to $500 million just by his return.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, there is something to be said about that. Equally, on the flip side, with the Warriors, right? And what they brought, and what's going to happen when they leave and go to San Francisco. How does that change the dynamic?
So you're a little bit more team. You're like Jordan, who cares about his shoes. I'm like, I want to know what he's doing with these.
I could do one. I love this debate, by the way, so much. It's ridiculous. The one thing I will taking off what you said.
You're like nodding off.
Stay with the Starbucks coffee. Imagine coffee there. Imagine coffee.
Super teams. And I will say, for me and for Jordan, for his era, yes, it was a lot more. The league was a lot more even in that. You know, you had him and the Knicks, and it took him years to get past the Pistons. You know, and Isaiah Thomas and those amazing teams. I will say this though, you say super teams. LeBron's kind of to blame for that. The decision, go to Miami, he signed with them, and then Kevin Durant, I don't think he comes to Golden State if not for that. And now it's almost like, it really is like this two-team system at this point. And so, I mean, I think it was Rob Parker from ESPN who said it last week. He goes, LeBron James, in the nicest way possible, ruined the NBA. Like, he left, he went there, and then, all right, this player goes here. And now it's like, it's so diluted because
He was probably wearing Michael Jordan shoes. He's like biased.
But here we go, though.
The NBA Cold War. There's these superpowers now.
But here we go to the next hero of the day, double standard, right? So previous commissioner David Stern didn't allow the Chris Paul transaction to happen because of the whole super team, right? So then the NBA politically got involved because the owners didn't want that super team to go to LA Lakers with that
There's
one.
so much drama in the NBA,
right? There's a lot of politics to it all, right? And so now because now you allow the new commissioner allows the KD transfer. So now that went from a big three in Miami Heat with LeBron. So you have like literally this super four in the Warriors, right? So politically, I think it's a little bit uneven, a little bit of a double standard. But again, for me, it's just interesting to see what basketball and sports can do to a city and its community. I actually am curious. I want the people in Oakland,
Cleveland.
and I also want people from Oakland to tweet us. And I want them to know how are they going to feel when they've been so loyal. Oakland Warriors has one of the most loyal fan bases. That arena I've been in is intense. They've been holding the Warriors down when they were not Klay Thompson and Splash Brothers. Now you're going to go to San Francisco and go after that Silicon Valley money after these residents have been holding you down for so long. The NBA, I'm watching you.
All right.
Tweet us. Let us know.
You've heard that, Oakland, right? Yeah. All right, so now we're going to get a little political here. This White House invitation, right? Okay, so the White House invitation, right? So now there are teams saying, we don't want to go, they're going to go. But at the same time, the team has said they actually haven't formally been invited, and the White House hasn't said anything. You know, what do you think? You know, we saw that with the Super Bowl winners. You know, Trump is very polarizing, and not everyone wants to go. Do you think it's the right decision to turn, if they are invited, not to go to the White House?
Yeah, it's a choice.
I really think this goes back to what we were saying earlier. I mean, you can take this kind of a stance and you probably get so much in return afterwards. You know, so. I
mean, I think there was some when Obama was president that some of the winning team's players didn't go as well. I think you see this.
Very few, though. Just want to know.
Yeah.
For the record.
They just want to talk sports with Obama.
But then let's look what the Patriots did when they came to the White House. Half that team came. Didn't come. And so there's a huge contingent of the the Patriots, Kraft, supporter of Trump.
Exactly
the
right.
owner, him and Trump are friends. It was a dilemma. And so if the Warriors
Don't
choose
forget,
not
Tom Brady
to.
didn't go last year either. So like,
It's true, yeah.
apparently he's supposedly a supporter of Trump and everything like that. And like, no one made a big to do about that. Like, where's Tom Brady? Where's my friend? And then we didn't see Trump like yelling, Tom, you let me down. Like, this is a tremendous
Tweeting
disaster.
Tom.
It's tremendous disaster, Tom. Where are you?
Not something he wouldn't do.
At all. I think Brady said something. He had a family emergency that
Yes.
prevented him. So I want to make sure.
But so the Warriors, though, but
Tom go blue. Tom Brady go blue.
But their coach, though, he's actually he said so many nasty things about Trump. So I'm wondering. I don't think they're even going to get invited, to be honest. I mean, it's easy to say you're not going to go to something you're not invited to.
Well, David, you just hit on something. Now, if Trump doesn't extend an invitation, now that's interesting. That means can you be the bigger person?
If they
still
haven't done the invite yet, I don't know when it's coming. I mean, I actually don't expect it to come at this point. It's like.
But you know who
What are you
did
waiting
invite
for?
them already?
Who?
Nancy Pelosi.
I was just going to
On
ask
The
you.
Twitter.
peacemaker.
Yeah, on Twitter, she said, I would love to welcome you.
She probably knows Trump's not inviting them. That's why she said that, right?
I was going to ask because we had the not White House Correspondents' Dinner, right? So I was like, if they're not invited, what's the not NBA championships thing? Is it
Nancy Pelosi on the steps of the Capitol. I can see it. I can visualize it. We're going to be talking about it, and it's going to be a moment.
That's true, right? Dinner at Nancy's.
Yeah.
Okay.
But see how sports and politics go hand in hand.
Yeah. Collision.
It's policy.
It's collision.
It's economics.
It's the whole thing.
It's double standards.
All right,
Yeah.
guys.
The whole package.
Best part of the show now. Real talk. Rothman, you're on.
I'm first?
You're first.
Oh, this is our final thoughts, basically?
Final thought. Yes.
I will say, okay, speaking of girl power and changing the game, I was lucky enough to be part of an amazing thing last Friday when we covered the premiere of season 5 of Orange is the New Black.
Amazing show.
It was a beast to cover. It was 2 hours, but it was 2 hours because there was 30 to 40 smart, talented, brilliant women there with the deepest bench on TV. And at one point in the evening, I turned and looked at my co-host and I said, we've gone through 15 interviews. I feel like I've interviewed everybody, but there's 5 more coming down the road.
Yeah.
And I think we're heading in the right direction, and that kind of makes me feel good. I don't think I made it sound as eloquent as it happened in my mind at the time.
You did, Michael. You did.
But we're heading in the right direction. I think it's a really beautiful sign to couple that with Wonder Woman. I think things are going right. I think we need to keep pushing for these stories, for diversity of audience, diversity of the cast, and just keep moving forward like this.
All right. Great real talk. Mike, you
Yeah.
got the floor.
Mine would have to be, so last night I had the chance to go to the Alvin Ailey Gala,
Yes.
the spring gala, and it was absolutely fantastic. Talking about
Story
art
top right there.
imitating
It's a story
life,
top.
Yeah.
right? And what we were saying earlier, this incredible, beautiful athletes on this stage doing these incredible moves that were really reflective of the generations of time that's
Yeah.
been a part of the American history. And Alvin Ailey is such an Americana art establishment institution of our times. I just want to encourage, it's summertime,
Yeah.
right? And they're also going to be on tour. So if Alvin Ailey ever comes to a city near you, please go see it. And if you're ever in New York City, please make an effort at the Lincoln Center to stop by and watch these beautiful dancers perform
Done.
American history.
All right. Good. Real
Yeah, I
talk.
see that
Take it
pretty
away,
much every single
Candace.
time they come.
Yeah.
They're great. Actually, I was just going to recommend a movie.
Yes.
It's kind of a guilty pleasure. I'm just going to say that. This is a disclaimer. It's called 47 Meters Down, starring Mandy Moore and Claire Holt. It's a shark thriller. So
Cool.
it's kind of derivative, but if you want to shut your mind off, you need some kind of like summer thriller going on, definitely check
I
it out.
heed your advice. You're a film blocker. I listen to you there. My real talk is, last week I was at the Tonys, and people always say this, Gavin Creel, he won, the Tony for actor in Hello, Dolly. And, somebody asked him, how do you, what's your advice to actors? This is not my goal, but it was the point. And he just was like, and again, this is always hammered home. He said, stay off social media. He's like, it got me in such a bad mood. I look at it, you get competitive. And it's like, when I got away from it, he just felt so much like such a better person. His mind was clear. It didn't make him crazy. And he felt it made him so much more successful, which is interesting because I think for people who are, kind of public figures or where you, like, you're in the media, you're like, oh my God, you have to be on Twitter. You have to be on social media. And this is a guy who's like a Tony Award winner, right? But it's interesting that some of the most successful public figures and particularly actors, they're not. I mean, do you see like, George Pitt? George Pitt. That's if they got married, right? Who knows?
That's next. That's a spoiler.
I know. Sorry. I'm only kidding. I don't want any lawyers to call me.
Breaking news.
Yeah, right.
Viral.
No. But like George Clooney, Brad Pitt, Jennifer Aniston. These people, none of them are on social. So I just thought, again, you hear this, it's always a common theme. People are like, stay off it. But just, when he was up there, holding his Tony in front of all these people, and this was in the winner's room afterwards, you're just like, it really resonated. It was really great. Yeah. All right, guys, this was amazing. This was great Real Talk. We are done. And until the next time on Real Live, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
See ya.